Good evening, Shashi. My name is Savita. A quick comment and then maybe a quick question. I'm sure your intelligence has opened many doors to you, but being good-looking, people must have attributed it to your good looks. That feels, I mean, it's a taste of what a woman feels like most of the time. So that was a comment. I don't know whether you have had that sort of an experience or not. My experience has taught me that intelligent people get into more trouble than the mediocre do. Do you have a comment on that? You've been asked a lot of questions on politics. I thought I'd ask you something different.
Well, listen, I'm sure that, that beautiful women also want to be recognized not for what they are, but what they do, what they think, what they say. And certainly, I would not put myself in the same camp as that category, as you suggested. But certainly, I want to be judged for the work I've done and the ideas I've come up with and the contributions I've tried to make to our public life, and not for more superficial things. But sadly, we live in an era where the media tends to focus on the superficial, with all apologies to those gentlemen there. But coming back to, that was a response to your comment. Now the question, did I hear it right? You said...
the intelligent get into more trouble than the mediocre do.
Well, that's probably answered. There are people who are intelligent enough not to get into trouble, and clearly, therefore, I'm not intelligent enough. But the truth is that...
What has been your experience?
Look, there's also a context. I mean, in my case, I spent 29 years at the United Nations, and in every one of my positions there, from my entry to my time of exit, I was wheeled out by the organization that I was serving to speak to the international media, and on some of the toughest forums, I was the first UN official to appear twice on BBC's Hard Talk, against some fairly aggressive questioning. I was the most frequent UN guest on Fox News, which was sort of the American equivalent of Times Now, you know, the really nasty, aggressive sort of stuff. And I've lost count of the number of interviews I've given, the number of channels and radio stations and TV stations and newspapers I must have addressed in the course of those 29 years. And I'm proud to say that never once in those 29 years was I ever accused of saying the wrong thing, putting a word wrong or a foot wrong. Never once. You can Google it and find out. So the question is, how does somebody who actually people turned to know the right thing to say and to say it right, suddenly become Mr. Foot in the Mouth in India? And I think in all fairness, one has to ask oneself whether there wasn't some malice behind some of these whipped up controversies. Yes, I did say cattle class, but the question was asked, Mr. Minister, will you travel cattle class? I merely repeated the phrase asked in the question because I knew it was a very well established, banal phrase that I'd heard for 30 years already. So I thought maybe people in India were also aware of it, and that's why the questioner was asking. The questioner happened to be a BJP inclined journalist. And he had a nasty motive for asking it, and I fell right into the trap. So there you are, I wasn't intelligent enough. But I was not prepared for the public concluding that I had dismissed all ordinary people who travel in economy class as cattle, which wasn't the meaning of the phrase at all. Cattle class doesn't refer to people. It doesn't refer to a class of people. It refers to economy class because the airlines herd us in like cattle in that class, and therefore it's a criticism of the airlines. But apparently no one knew that in India, or people chose not to know it. And as you know, I got lambasted. A Congress chief minister called for my resignation on the use of this phrase. I mean, this was the kind of thing I had to go to. Or my completely accurate use of the word interlocutor, which is a routine word in diplomacy that I'd used, God knows, hundreds of times in my UN career, and which was deliberately chosen to be twisted by certain channels in this country as meaning intermediary, which it does not. And they basically accused me of betraying Indian foreign policy and completely cast a shadow over the Prime Minister's visit to Saudi Arabia, purely in the interests of malicious sensationalism. Now, as I said, I hadn't used the wrong word. This could not have been a controversy in any country where the journalists took the trouble to look up the English dictionary. But in India, sadly, the standards were different. So we've had to live with a cheapening and a dumbing of public discourse, which certainly I suffered from a great deal, particularly in my first few years. I think it's fair to say you've seen fewer examples of these in recent years. I've finally acquired the intelligence to learn what not to say that could be misunderstood exactly. And the truth is also that in our country, you know, we are a multilingual polity. it's very difficult to try and be witty or funny in our country, because unless the joke translates equally well across all our languages, it's liable to be misunderstood, twisted, mistranslated. It's almost not worth being funny except in private. I'm sorry to say that. And therefore, part of being intelligent is learning to bite your tongue, which I'm beginning to do.
Thank you.